Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The rematch between Alexander Povetkin and Dillian Whyte has been postponed until January. So this is because Alexander Povetkin has tested positive for COVID-19. And see here is a press release from Matchroom announcing that Povetkin tests positive for COVID-19. Whyte rematch, new target date, January 30, 2021. So below it sort of repeats some of that detail. Further details on the November 21 show will follow shortly. And I guess you'd have to imagine it won't be a pay-per-view show any longer, and they'll be looking for one of the undercard fights, potentially to headline some sort of normal fight night type show. We'll have to see. But Eddie Hearn, he is quoted saying, "Firstly, we want to wish Alexander Povetkin a speedy recovery. This is a challenging time for shows. There will be lots of ups and downs over the next few months. We look forward to the fight happening in late January." And there's a couple of things to go through with this in terms of Povetkin. We'll get to that in a second. And Whyte, obviously, this may be a blessing in disguise, and we'll come to that too. But of Povetkin, in terms of the sentiment there from Hearn, yeah, I mean, hopefully there is no lasting effects for Povetkin, and he does have a speedy recovery. Obviously, this virus can affect people in different ways. Sometimes there can be lasting effects, in particular in relation to the lungs. And for a high-performance athlete like Povetkin, even though he's at the tail end of his career, obviously that sort of stuff is very important. So wishing him a speedy recovery. But in terms of the Dillian Whyte sort of side of the fence, I think this could be good for him. There was a lot of concern from a lot of fans, and I expressed it as well, that rushing into a November 21st rematch with Povetkin after having been brutally starched back in August, it was a very tight turnaround. It wasn't a wise move, and obviously it's sort of been taken out of Dillian Whyte's hands now. It is going to be potentially January 30, 2021, an extra couple of months for Dillian Whyte to prepare for the rematch. That knockout a couple of months ago was one of the most vicious of the year, and despite the nonsense from Whyte saying he wasn't Sparko and all that, and Eddie Hearn trying to claim that Dillian Whyte was trying to get up at 8 when there was no count administered, I mean, I think this is actually good for him, because there could have been some hangover effects from that brutal knockout coming into a second fight. So I think a couple of extra months to prepare, not a bad thing. And Whyte had said he wasn't really going to do anything different, but I do think they will use the time, they will strategize, and I think it's going to be good for him to have that extra time, mentally and physically. And I guess, with shows and COVID-19, we're going to see some of this, that other shows, it's already sort of happened in the Top Rank bubble. Some events have been changed around because fighters have tested positive. Some of them have been false positives, but there has been fights that have been pulled quite late in the piece. Obviously, this one here was going to be a pay-per-view event, so I guess the accountants at Sky Sports probably won't like it, but they will get it in January anyway. So, I mean, it's just going to be pushed down the line. And there is another thing sort of falls out of this. Remembering Dillian Whyte had one of the reasons he wanted to have it in November was he still wanted to win back the WBC mandatory from Alexander Povetkin and then try to force the WBC to give him a fight against Tyson Fury. Remembering Whyte had been the mandatory to the WBC belt, but he lost that when he was knocked out by Alexander Povetkin. He would have got a title shot by February 2021, and that sort of all disappeared, went up in smoke through his recent loss, but he wanted to force the issue and try to get to the WBC to reinstate it. It always looked pretty unlikely, although that his promoter and Whyte were saying these things, and now it's just not possible because he's not the WBC mandatory, and his fight to try reclaim that not happening till January. So Tyson Fury, WBC, they are free and clear basically to do what they want, and they probably would have been anyway, but this just sort of snuffs out any hope of what Dillian Whyte had been pushing for, to try get back a February fight with Tyson Fury. So he'll have obviously the Christmas break off, and probably will remain out in Portugal where he's been training, probably for the most part. We'll have to see what he does. A lot of people have been helping him prepare for the rematch, and I think, he does have a good shot, but it's that whole narrative, repeat or revenge. I think a lot of people are looking forward to that fight, especially after the result of the first, what's going to happen, because Dillian Whyte's career, to a large extent, at least in terms of title aspirations, could hinge on him winning that fight. If he does lose, it could be a long way back. And it's not to say that he can't be in good fights and make good money, because he's already done that, and there would be rematches out there with him and potentially good fresh fights if he lost. But obviously his path to a title would become much harder, much longer, although heavyweights at a certain level with good promotional push are only ever 2 or 3 fights away from a title. But bad news here, a positive test for Alexander Povetkin, the fight postponed. They're targeting January 30. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.